Welcome back to the channel Rare Coins History, coin lovers and treasure hunters. Today, we're uncovering the hidden secrets of one of America's most collected coins, the Washington Quarter. Our focus is on the United States Washington Quarter dollar from 1970. To most people, it might just look like spare change, but coin collectors know there's much more to this little piece of history. Stick with me until the end of this video, because you'll be amazed to learn just how much money one of these quarters has sold for. To understand the importance of the 1970 Washington Quarter, we have to step back and look at the era it came from. The late 1960s and early 1970s were a transitional period for U.S. coinage. Just a few years earlier, in 1965, the mint had removed silver from circulating dimes and quarters, replacing it with a copper-nickel-clad composition to save money. That meant by 1970, quarters no longer contained any silver, but they still carried the traditional design that collectors had cherished since 1932. The Washington Quarter was originally introduced in 1932 to celebrate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. John Flanagan design was chosen for the coin, and it became an instant classic. On the obverse side, you see a strong, bold portrait of George Washington facing left. Above his head are the words, "Liberty," to the left is the motto, "In God We Trust," and just beneath his chin is the date, 1970. Depending on where the coin was minted, you may see a small mint mark next to the hair ribbon, either a D for Denver, an S for San Francisco, or no mark at all, which indicates Philadelphia. Turning to the reverse side, you'll find the familiar heraldic eagle design, with wings spread wide and arrows clutched in its talons. Above the eagle are the words, United States of America, with De Pluribus Unum just below. The denomination, quarter dollar, appears at the bottom. Even though millions of these coins were struck, the design remains a symbol of American pride and is beloved by collectors. Now, let's talk about what makes the 1970 quarter fascinating for collectors. First, the 1970 S-proof quarters struck at the San Francisco Mint have drawn huge attention over the years, not only because they were specially made for collectors but also because some contain famous minting oddities. Proof coins are struck multiple times on specially polished dies, giving them a mirror-like surface and razor-sharp details. But it's the rare errors and varieties that truly set some 1970 quarters apart from the rest. One of the most famous varieties from this year is the 1970 S-proof quarter struck on a Canadian quarter planchet. These unusual coins should never have existed, but accidents like this happen at the mint from time to time. Another collectible quirk involves double die obverse and reverse varieties, where the lettering or design shows visible doubling under magnification. Collectors love these coins because each one is essentially unique and far scarcer than regular strikes. Condition plays a massive role too. The vast majority of 1970 quarters were used in everyday transactions and show plenty of wear. But examples that were carefully preserved in mint state condition, free of scratches or circulation marks, are much harder to find. The higher the grade, the higher the value, especially when certified by professional grading companies. Let's not forget the difference between circulation strikes and proof coins. Circulation strikes were made for everyday use, while proof coins were created specifically for collectors and never intended for daily spending. A flawless proof quarter from 1970 can be an absolute treasure, especially when it carries one of the rare minting varieties. All of this brings us to the big question: how much can a 1970 Washington Quarter be worth? For most coins, the answer is simple, just 25 cents. But for those rare error coins, proof varieties, and high-grade survivors, the value skyrockets. Collectors have paid jaw-dropping amounts to own the rarest examples. In fact, one extraordinary 1970 Washington Quarter has sold for $57,600. Yes, you heard that right. $57,600 for a single quarter. It's hard to believe that a coin you might dismiss as pocket change could actually be worth more than a luxury car or even a down payment on a house. That's the thrill of numismatics. You never know what treasures might be hiding in plain sight. So, the next time you come across a 1970 quarter, don't just spend it. Take a closer look. Examine the date, the mint mark, the details of the strike, and the condition. You might be holding something far rarer and more valuable than you ever imagined. Today, we're diving into the United States Washington quarter dollar from the year 1973. At first glance, it looks like the ordinary 25-cent piece you might find in change, but as you'll see, this coin has some surprising secrets that make it a favorite for collectors. By the end of this video, you'll be amazed at how valuable one of these coins can be, so make sure you stay tuned all the way through. The Washington quarter has a long and proud history. It was first minted in 1932 to honor George Washington's 200th birthday, and it quickly became one of America's most iconic coins. By 1973, the quarter was already over 4 decades into circulation, carrying with it a sense of tradition and familiarity. But there were also important changes happening in U.S. coinage at this time that give the 1973 quarter a special place in numismatic history. Just a few years earlier, in the mid-1960s, the U.S. Mint stopped using silver in quarters and switched to a copper-nickel-clad composition. This was a huge change, and by 1973, Americans were getting used to quarters made entirely of base metals. Even though the silver was gone, the design remained the same, with John Flanagan's classic portrait of George Washington on the front and the proud heraldic eagle on the back. For many collectors, this era marks the transition from the old silver quarters to the modern clad coins, and that makes the 1973 issues very interesting. Looking closely at the obverse, you'll see Washington facing left with the word Liberty above his head and the motto, "In God We Trust," to the side. Beneath his chin, of course, is the date, 1973. Depending on the mint, you may also see a small mint mark, either a D for Denver or no mint mark at all for Philadelphia. On the reverse, the bold eagle sits with outstretched wings, clutching arrows in its talons, surrounded by olive branches, symbolizing both strength and peace. This design had already become iconic by this time and would remain until it was replaced in 1999 by the State Quarters program. Now, while millions of these coins were produced in 1973 for everyday use, not all of them are created equal. Condition is key in coin collecting, and that's where things start to get interesting. Most quarters from 1973 were used heavily in circulation and show plenty of wear and tear. But every now and then, a collector stumbles across an example in pristine, mint-state condition with sharp details and glowing luster. Those are the coins that make experts and collectors sit up and take notice. Beyond condition, there are also error coins that make the 1973 Washington quarter stand out. The minting process, though precise, is not perfect. Sometimes coins are struck slightly off-center, sometimes the dies double an image, and sometimes the wrong planchet finds its way into the press. When these mistakes happen, they create unique varieties that collectors are eager to own. The rarer and more dramatic the error, the more valuable the coin becomes. Proof versions of the 1973 quarter, struck in San Francisco, add another layer of interest. These coins were made specifically for collectors, using polished dies to create mirror-like surfaces and sharp details. While standard proof coins are collectible, certain high-grade examples or proofs with unusual variations can be worth much more than face value. So, what does this all mean for the value of the 1973 Washington quarter today? Well, most of them are still worth just 25 cents. But the story doesn't end there. The rare examples, whether they're error coins, proof coins in flawless condition, or circulation strikes that survived untouched, can command incredible prices at auction. Collectors are willing to pay big money to add these scarce coins to their collections, and that brings us to the most exciting part of all. Believe it or not, one remarkable 1973 Washington quarter has sold for an astonishing $51,800. Yes, you heard that correctly, $51,800 for a single quarter. Imagine finding one of these in your old coin jar or inherited collection. What looks like just another everyday coin could actually be a hidden treasure worth a life-changing amount of money. This is why coin collecting is so fascinating. Every coin tells a story, and sometimes those stories turn into surprises that are worth far more than anyone expected. So the next time you come across a 1973 Washington quarter, don't just spend it without a second thought. Take a close look. You never know what you might have. Today we're turning our attention to the United States Washington quarter dollar from the year 1974. At first glance, this coin may seem like just another everyday quarter, but as we'll discover, it carries an incredible story of history, design, rarity, and collector demand. By the end of this video, you'll find out how much one special example of this coin is actually worth, and trust me, you're going to be amazed. Let's start with a little history. By 1974, the Washington quarter had already been in circulation for more than 40 years. First minted in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, the coin was never intended to become a permanent series. But the design proved so popular that it stayed in production for decades, becoming one of the most recognizable coins in America. In the early 1970s, the country was going through economic changes. Silver had been removed from circulating quarters in 1965, replaced by a copper-nickel-clad composition. This meant that the 1974 quarters, like those from the years just before, were struck in a copper core with an outer layer of nickel, giving them that familiar silvery look without containing any precious metal. Even though the silver content was gone, collectors remained fascinated with the Washington quarter, and the 1974 issue is a perfect example of why. On the obverse side, you'll find the portrait of George Washington facing left, designed by John Flanagan. Above his head is the word Liberty, to the left the motto, In God We Trust, and below, the date, 1974. Depending on the mint, you'll see a small mint mark to the right of Washington's ponytail. A D indicates the Denver Mint, no mint mark indicates Philadelphia, and an S stands for the San Francisco Mint, where proof coins were made. Turning the coin over to the reverse, you'll see the majestic eagle design, wings spread wide, arrows in its talons, with olive branches below. Surrounding the eagle are the inscriptions United States of America and E Pluribus Unum, with the denomination quarter dollar at the bottom. This design, with its bold and patriotic imagery, would remain the face of the quarter until the state quarters program launched in 1999. Now let's talk about what makes the 1974 quarter special for collectors. First, condition matters enormously. The vast majority of quarters minted in 1974 went straight into circulation, bouncing through cash registers, vending machines, and pockets for decades. Most surviving examples are heavily worn. But if you manage to find a coin that has survived in mint state condition, sharp details, full luster, and no signs of circulation, that's when the value can start to climb. Proof quarters from 1974, struck in San Francisco, are another category worth mentioning. These coins were produced specifically for collectors, using polished dies and special blanks to achieve mirror-like fields and razor-sharp details. Many proof coins remain in excellent condition since they were never meant for circulation. Still, only the highest graded proofs with perfect surfaces can bring in significant value. Then there are the rare varieties and minting errors. Collectors love these because they transform an ordinary coin into a one-of-a-kind treasure. For the 1974 Washington quarter, double die varieties are especially prized. With these coins, parts of the design or lettering appear doubled, a mistake that occurred during the creation of the dies. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and other unusual mint errors also exist, and they make these coins far more desirable on the market. So what does this all mean in terms of value? For most 1974 quarters, the answer is simple: they're still worth just 25 cents. But that's only the case for well-worn examples that have seen decades of circulation. When you step into the world of uncirculated coins, proof coins, and especially rare errors, the story changes completely. And now, for the moment you've been waiting for. One extraordinary 1974 Washington quarter has sold for an astonishing $49,600. Yes, you heard that correctly, $49,600 for a single quarter. It's incredible to think that a coin worth 25 cents at the grocery store could also be worth the price of a luxury car in the right condition and under the right circumstances. That's the magic of coin collecting. You never know what treasures are hiding in plain sight until you take a closer look. So next time you come across a 1974 quarter, don't just toss it aside. Check for mint marks, inspect the details, and look for signs of errors or exceptional condition. you just might be holding a small piece of American history that's worth far more than its face value. Today, we're taking a close look at the United States Washington quarter dollar from 1965. This particular year is not just another date on a coin, it represents one of the biggest changes in American coinage history. While most people would glance at it and see just 25 cents, coin collectors know it carries secrets that make it far more valuable than you could ever imagine. Stick with me to the end, because you'll be stunned when you hear the incredible value of certain 1965 quarters. To understand the 1965 quarter, we need to take a step back into the early 1960s. At that time, U.S. coins such as dimes, quarters, and half dollars were still being struck in 90% silver. But as silver prices rose, people began hoarding coins for their metal value rather than spending them. This created a nationwide coin shortage and pushed the U.S. Mint to make a critical decision. Starting in 1965, quarters were no longer struck in silver. Instead, they were made with a copper-nickel clad composition, an inner core of pure copper sandwiched between outer layers of nickel. This was a monumental change. The 1965 quarter became the very first year of the clad coinage era. To ease the transition and discourage hoarding, the Mint even decided to remove mint marks from quarters between 1965 and 1967. That means every single 1965 quarter, whether it was struck in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, looks identical with no mint mark. Collectors love this fact, because it marks the beginning of a brand new chapter in U.S. coin history. Now let's talk about the design. On the obverse, we have John Flanagan portrait of George Washington, the same design first introduced in 1932. Above Washington's head is the word Liberty, to the left the motto, In God We Trust, and at the bottom, the date 1965. Flip it over, and the reverse displays the powerful heraldic eagle with wings spread wide, clutching arrows in its talons, with olive branches beneath. Above the eagle are the words, United States of America, and the denomination, quarter dollar, rests at the bottom. While the design remained the same, the composition change gave the coin a slightly different look and feel compared to its silver predecessors. For collectors, the 1965 quarter has several layers of intrigue. The first is the history. It marks the turning point from silver to clad. The second is rarity in condition. The vast majority of these coins went straight into circulation, passed through millions of hands, and picked up scratches, wear, and discoloration. Finding a 1965 quarter in high mint state condition, with original luster and no signs of heavy circulation, is much harder than it sounds. Coins like that are significantly more desirable and can fetch strong prices at auction, but the real excitement comes with rare errors. During the transition in 1965, a few quarters were accidentally struck on leftover 90% silver planchets from 1964. These transitional error coins are among the most famous and valuable in modern numismatics. Imagine holding a coin dated 1965 that looks like any other quarter but is actually silver. That's the kind of rarity collectors dream about. Other errors from this year include off-center strikes, double strikes, and die varieties, all of which make the coin far more interesting and valuable. Proof-like examples and special mint set strikes from 1965 also hold collector appeal. Since no official proof coins were struck that year, the Mint released special mint sets instead. Coins from these sets often have better detail and finish compared to regular circulation strikes. If you come across a 1965 quarter with sharp details and semi-mirror surfaces, chances are it might be from one of these sets. So what does all of this mean in terms of value? While most 1965 quarters are still worth face value, the rare ones, those struck in pristine mint state, coins with dramatic minting errors, and especially the transitional silver planchet quarters, can reach jaw-dropping levels at auction. Collectors are constantly on the lookout for these special coins, and the demand pushes prices higher and higher, and now comes the part you've been waiting for. One remarkable 1965 Washington quarter has sold for an incredible $67,300. Yes, you heard that correctly, $67,300 for a single quarter. It's almost unbelievable that a coin you might still find in circulation today could be worth more than a brand new luxury vehicle. That's the thrill of coin collecting, Every coin tells a story, and sometimes that story can lead to life-changing discoveries. So the next time you come across a 1965 quarter, don't just toss it into your change jar. Look closely, check its condition, and pay attention to its details. You might just be holding a piece of American history that's worth thousands of dollars. Today, we're going to explore one of the most fascinating quarters in U.S. history, the Washington quarter dollar from 1967. On the surface, it looks just like a regular coin you'd use for parking meters or vending machines, but what lies behind this date is a fascinating mix of history, rarity, and collector intrigue. Stay with me until the end, because the value that some of these coins have reached will absolutely surprise you. Let's go back in time to understand why the 1967 quarter is so important. Just a couple of years earlier, in 1965, the United States Mint made a monumental change. Rising silver prices had made it unsustainable to continue striking dimes and quarters in 90% silver. People were hoarding the silver coins, and circulation was drying up. To fix the crisis, the Mint introduced the new copper-nickel clad composition. By 1967, this new clad coinage had become the standard. The 1967 Washington quarter, therefore, represents the early years of America's modern coinage, where precious metal was replaced by practicality. But there's another twist to the story. From 1965 to 1967, the Mint decided to remove mint marks from coins altogether. This was done to discourage collectors from hoarding coins by date and mint. That means every 1967 quarter, whether it was struck in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, has no mint mark. For collectors today, this makes the coin a symbol of that unusual period in U.S. minting history when the government tried to control collecting habits. Now let's look at the design. On the obverse, you'll find John Flanagan portrait of George Washington, bold and timeless, facing left. Above his head sits the word Liberty, while to the side is the phrase, "In God We Trust." At the bottom, the date reads 1967. On the reverse, the majestic heraldic eagle spreads its wings wide, clutching arrows in its talons with olive branches below. Around the eagle are the inscriptions, United States of America, and E Pluribus Unum, with quarter dollar clearly at the bottom. Even though the composition changed, the design continued to embody American strength and tradition. When it comes to collecting, the 1967 quarter has several points of interest. First is condition. Most of the quarters minted this year entered circulation immediately and stayed in use for decades. Coins that have been passed through countless hands will naturally show heavy wear, scratches, and loss of detail. But the rare survivors in mint state condition, coins that look just as fresh as the day they were struck, are the ones collectors chase after. In fact, high-grade examples certified by grading services can bring in impressive premiums compared to ordinary circulated pieces. Another fascinating aspect of the 1967 quarter is the special mint set, often called SMS coins. Since no proof coins were issued from 1965 through 1967, the Mint instead released these special sets for collectors. Coins from these sets often have sharper details and better finishes compared to circulation strikes. Some even display satiny or proof-like surfaces that make them especially appealing. A top-graded SMS quarter from 1967 can be worth far more than face value, and then, of course, we have minting errors and varieties. These are always exciting for collectors because they turn a common coin into something truly unique. Off-center strikes, double strikes, and die breaks are just some of the types of errors that have been found on 1967 quarters. Each error coin is different, and the rarer or more dramatic the error, the higher its value climbs. Imagine holding a coin that is the only one of its kind. That's what error collecting is all about, but the story doesn't stop there. Transitional errors also hold special interest. During this period, there were instances of coins being struck on leftover planchets meant for other denominations or compositions. Any such discovery linked to the 1967 quarter makes headlines in the numismatic world, because they are truly once-in-a-lifetime finds. So, how much can a 1967 Washington quarter actually be worth? For the vast majority, the answer is still 25 cents. But for coins preserved in pristine condition, coins from the special mint sets graded at the highest levels, and rare error coins, the value can soar far beyond expectations. And now, the moment you've been waiting for. One exceptional 1967 Washington quarter has sold for an astonishing $64,900. Yes, you heard that correctly, $64,900 for a single quarter. It's almost unbelievable to think that a coin so ordinary to most people could actually be worth more than a luxury car. That's the magic of coin collecting, where history, rarity, and condition combine to turn pocket change into treasures. So the next time you come across a 1967 quarter, don't just dismiss it as ordinary change. Look closely at its condition, see if it might be from a special mint set, and check for unusual errors. You might just have a hidden gem that could change your life. Thank you so much for watching today's deep dive into the story of the 1967 Washington quarter dollar. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next journey into the world of rare and valuable coins. Until next time, happy collecting.